Today's video is going to be a sprinting analysis on Bayanda Walaza, the under-20 100-meter champion, going in depth into his arm swing and what he's doing well within that arm swing, but also just getting into some of the things he does within his start, top-end speed, and just giving a better explanation of his mechanics in general. Going to go ahead and hop right into the video, and we can see him here at the start. And what's interesting to me, when he's starting, he doesn't have the same degree of arm swing. You can kind of see here how he's like way out to the side with that right hand, and even the announcers kind of talked about it during the race, like if he fixed that, would he be able to run faster?
What do you think? If they tidy up his arm action, will it take away from the raw speed and talent?
That is how he runs. He runs free, he runs loose, and if you try and tighten up his arm action, something else will compensate in the wrong way.
Which I disagree with. I do think that this is something that is not helping him in the long term, but we'll get more into that as we go through the video. When we first start, though, again, looking at the start, we could see very different positions within some of these sprinters, and this is really shows the difference between the highest level of sprinting. When you watch the Olympics, we see a lot of similarities within that first step in comparison to the under 20, where there's a lot more just kind of raw talent put together here, where you're going to get a lot different types of sprinters and a lot of different types of mechanics. But when we see his right arm, you can see he does a good job of keeping everything pretty locked into place. He's going more straight back. He's keeping that elbow bent. He's a little bit wide as he comes through, but overall, it's a lot more of a sound mechanics when he gets to his top speed. And this is really where it starts to kind of break here, is getting into this step. And to me, what that ends up being is his spine, right? Because as he starts to come upwards more in the spine, that's when he starts to swing more with the right arm, right? So when you see the right arm here, very locked in, and he's a little bit more rounded, a little bit more of a forward lean, where when he gets to higher position, the higher he goes within his spine, the more he ends up wanting to get into early elbow extension and really going wide with the hand position. And I've even noticed that recently within my own sprinting. In certain parts of my start, I have more range in my shoulders in comparison to the top end speed, where I don't have as much range. And it looks like it's a similar situation here with Walaza, where as he gets into his top speed, the range within his spine, within his shoulders, ends up changing. Now, to get into some of the things that I think really stand out is he does such a great job of generating a lot of power into the ground. He's getting a ton of extension, a ton of horizontal force, as well as vertical force, but a lot of it has to do with how he is pulling back, and that's where the speed comes from, right? So where the announcer may be right in his sprinting mechanics could be that he's going to have a hard time generating the same level of force into the ground without having the same degree of arm movement. So as he's going and getting as far back as he does, what that does, it really allows him to have a lot longer backside mechanics. We see that right leg. He's really far back as he is coming back and through, and then therefore is, again, generating a lot of force into the ground. The issue is there's just a lot more time with that foot back behind, right? So as he gets to higher and higher levels, it's going to be hard for him to be able to continue to lower that time down. I mean, he's 18 years old, ran the 10:19, so he won the under 20 with the 10:19, and you know, there's plenty of people that are under 20 that have run under that time. His personal best is 10:13, and he's 10th this year with an under 20 with his top time. So gives you an idea of how many other athletes that are competing at a very high level, and he's only 5'6", so he's not a very tall guy. Where he's going to end up having a hard time is going to be being able to maintain the force production into the ground while also having a quick turnover speed. One of the things that Usain Bolt was able to do is it was very easy for him to generate a lot of force in the ground because of how tall he was. And so it's a very different contrast here when you're talking about Usain Bolt 6'5" and Bayanda Walaza and being only 5'6". So he has to rely a lot more on that foot contact time. So he's generating more force in the ground, but he's also getting a longer foot contact time, which is great right now because he just won the U20 100-meter championship. But as he is continuing to face higher and higher level competition, it's going to be very difficult for him to continue to improve. Now, another thing that I think is a good thing to take a look at is he has a lot of action within the head as he's accelerating, as he's going through those first few steps. And I think this is an important part of being able to develop your speed. You have to be able to understand that weight shift from side to side in order to make it so you can develop great acceleration mechanics. If you're too locked in with your head, I think that's going to negatively impact your ability to get to top speed as you go through your drive phase or your transition phase, right? Where Bayanda does a really good job of having good movement side to side with the head. And I think he does a good job too of being able to generate a lot of force in the ground. He's a little bit far back on the landing within the right leg, but on the left leg, he does a great job with that foot, lands on the front part of the foot, very quick to be able to get the foot off the ground, which is great. It's just that right leg he's landing a little bit too far back, a little bit too long with the foot on the ground, and that's really impacting how much time it takes him to be able to get that foot up and through. Again, I mean, this isn't a ton of time here. We're talking about maybe 100, 200 of a second at the most, but that ends up being the difference. The right side is really where a lot of that speed comes from. He's a lot more active within the foot. He has a lot more power on that right side, which is good. There's a little bit too much of a difference from one side to the other here, which I think is also impacting his ability to get into those really low level 10s or even to be able to break 10. So I do think he'll be able to break 10. I think there's plenty of things for him to be able to work on, and he does have a pretty naturally long stride. Again, just going to be tough for him to be able to get, sub 9.9 based off of his height and some of the things that he has kind of limiting him within his mechanics. And that's where, again, being able to get more effective with that arm swing is going to be important. If you want to be able to continue to improve, that arm swing's got to be able to change, because it's just allowing him to keep his foot back behind him too long, which right now is good and it's helpful and makes it so he is able to run really good times. But if he ends up suffering a lot because he makes adjustments in the right hand and within the right arm, that's going to really negatively impact his performance. So he has to make that adjustment in order to be able to get down into the 9.9 area. But the issue is that when he makes that adjustment, it's going to be harder for him to generate force. And so he's going to have to be able to make adjustments within his lower body, particularly within his left leg, in order to make it so he can still run elite level times with a more effective arm swing. So that's my opinion watching him. I do think that there's a lot of other very talented U20 people that I'm going to do videos on, Christian Miller being one. Gary Card, I think, is somebody that is very, very underrated right now. Guy out of Jamaica, 17 years old. A lot of good things that we could see within his mechanics, where I think he's a very big up-and-coming top-level sprinter, high-level sprinter, and is from Jamaica too, which makes it so he's going to be competing against some of the best athletes, which is only going to raise the bar even further. As always, if you like the information, like and subscribe. We have a couple other videos here, and we'll talk to you soon.